The guy just loves it, loves ball, loves being on with me. And even though he's on vacation, it's John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. John, how are you, sir?
Oh, I didn't know you were talking about me with that intro. Then I realized you are. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Dave.
Well, thanks for making time. We've got a lot to talk about. And Danny White gets a raise, Josh Heupel gets a raise, and it's all brought to you by Viles Automotive Group on Callahan and Big Orange Phillies on Maynardville Pike. Let's start with the Josh Heupel raise, and want to play a little game called Better or Prove It. Is Josh Heupel better than other coaches that are paid in the same tax bracket as him, or does he still have to prove it? But before we get to all of that, which should be entertaining, what did you think about going from 5 to 9 million? I talked to some people that were incredibly surprised. I thought that was kind of in line where he should be.
Well, the market has gone crazy this year.
Right.
Okay, Lane Kiffin, the Ole Miss coach, is talking to Auburn. Ole Miss understandably panics and pays him whatever it takes. Is Lane Kiffin worth $9 million? Maybe in today's market, but he's never won a championship. He's never won a conference championship. He hasn't won a division championship. I mean, to me, he's still got to prove what he's making. Mark Stoops at Kentucky, he just went 7-6, and you up his salary to $9 million. Where was he headed? Were the Cowboys talking to him, Dave? You're a Cowboys fan. I guess you still are. Were they talking to him?
Yes, they wanted him to kick field goals and extra points.
No, he could be.
I'm still bitter about that at all.
Yeah, kicker / coach. Oh man, that's. We should do a podcast on kicking. Yes, Mark Stoops. He's done a nice job at Kentucky. He's been helped by a very lame non-conference schedule and getting to play Vanderbilt every year. That pretty much gives him 5 wins. And he added a couple. Wait, did he lose to Vanderbilt this year?
I think he did.
How could you lose to Vanderbilt and get a raise?
As one person in Tennessee's athletic department and their football program told me, how can you just lose to Vanderbilt at all? I mean, that was stunning to Tennessee's athletic department. And you're right. I mean, the numbers are so bizarre that I could write a column, and so could you. Yours would be better written, but that Josh Heupel is underpaid. I mean, because he's done as much or more than Lane Kiffin, done as much or more than Mark Stoops. I think he has a brighter future at his school than either one. We could make that argument right now and make a real argument.
Oh yeah, I mean, last year he was one of the best bargains in football. Josh Heupel was making 4-point-something million a year, or maybe 5, and he wins 11 games, plays in a New Year's Six bowl. Lane Kiffin did that the year before, but I think Tennessee under Heupel has a better chance of sustaining that than Lane Kiffin does at Ole Miss. I don't think this is the ceiling for Heupel in Tennessee. It might be for Ole Miss, but I give Lane Kiffin credit. I mean, if you look at Ole Miss's situation, maybe Ole Miss looks at it like, who would we get that's better?
That's true.
So and maybe Kentucky's saying, who can we get that's better? But I just don't understand what Mark Stoops' leverage was.
I don't know. Maybe there were a couple of Big 10 and Big 12 jobs that came open. I don't know. I don't know what he did to get that type of money. Good for him and his agents. Probably Jimmy Sexton. Don't we always just say that it's Jimmy Sexton when we're not sure?
Well, we assume. You know what he's saying, Jimmy Sexton, he gets one client. I assume Elijah Drinkwitz of Missouri is a Jimmy Sexton client.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, if so, that's what you do. you get a coach an unjustified raise, an extravagant raise. I don't know what Missouri administrators were. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to imply that anyone uses illicit drugs, but uh, why would you give Eli Drinkwitz a coach with 3 seasons under his belt and he's got a losing record? And you say, man, we got to give this guy $3 more million a year. Got to.
I do miss the days to some extent when the numbers were more understandable, and that in order to get a raise, you had to put your name out there to be an offensive line coach in the NFL, like Philip Fulmer did. And I miss those days where you had to have leverage. Mark Stoops' case, it doesn't appear to be necessary whatsoever in Lexington. So I heard that number, and you actually surprised me. I'd missed the Lane Kiffin number of 9 million. So suddenly, I'm just like, yeah, this is a very fair contract. And I tell you, the other thing that I thought was incredibly interesting, and I got confirmation from UT on this, and it took a little bit of time, but here's how committed that Josh Heupel is to Tennessee. He has a buyout. If the Dallas Cowboys fired Mike McCarthy and called him tomorrow, and I think he's a better NFL prospect than even a college prospect based off scouts I've talked to. If the Dallas Cowboys called him tomorrow, he'd have to pay, or somebody'd have to pay, Jerry Jones would have to pay $8 million in order to get him. I know. I triple checked it. And after December the 15th, it would still be $6 million heading in to the 2024 season. He is so locked into the balls. It's ridiculous.
Well, you don't see those kind of clauses very often, i.e. Jimbo Fisher's contract with Texas A&M, no buyout. You can go wherever you want. Now is if anybody will have you. That's the addition to that phrase. But Jerry Jones, I mean, he wouldn't have any problem paying $8 million. Right now, he'd pay $8 million for a guy that can make an extra point. So, yeah, he would pay Josh Heupel that much. And I agree. I think Josh Heupel has the temperament and the expertise on offense to be an NFL coach. I think he'd be a really good NFL coach.
I did too. I was told by a scout that what would be most appealing is that he's running a different offense than he did at Oklahoma. And the fact that he's willing to be flexible would make him really stand out. And he's a bright offensive mind. And he's managing NIL, which has to be somewhat similar to managing contracts. Not that he would be the GM as well. But I want to throw some coaches at you, and we're going to play a little game that we came up with. And it's called Better or Prove It. So is Josh Heupel a better coach, or does he still have to prove it with the highest paid coaches in the SEC and the nation? It's brought to you by Viles Automotive Group right there in Callahan, the epicenter of car buying. It is fantastic. Viles Automotive Group, they want to make sure you're treated fairly and right, and they appreciate your business. Also, a service department that will make sure you're on the go without any added on charges. It's Viles Automotive Group. So are you ready for the new game show that's sweeping the land? How about that, John Adams? Here we go. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So it's Better or Prove It. Is Josh Heupel a better coach than the person I'm going to give you, or does he still have to prove it? Dabo Swinney, $11.5 million. Better or prove it?
Prove it.
Okay. 2 championships. I understand that. Nick Saban, I think we would both agree, prove it, right?
Yes.
Kirby Smart, we would have to agree, prove it, right?
Yes.
Now it gets interesting. Lincoln Riley, $10 million. Better or prove it?
Prove it.
I'll go prove it. Ryan Day, $9.5 million.
Prove it.
I'm going to disagree there. I'm going to say better. If I were starting Hooker University, which is an interesting name.
No.
Yeah. Imagine
you can't do that.
Imagine the minor you could get at that school. I would actually take Josh Heupel over Ryan Day. I would. I think there's more long-term potential there. I think that Ryan Day plays a soft schedule. It helps his team be healthier at the end of the year. I think the SEC is the SEC. So we'll disagree there. Brian Kelly, better or prove it? at 9 point
Prove it.
9.5. Prove it. I'll agree with
Prove
you.
it.
Then it gets kind of goofy. Mel Tucker, 9.5
Good.
$9.5 million.
I guess, I mean, the AD or university president of Michigan State, are they related to the people at Missouri? Is there some kind of bizarre connection there? Because giving Mel Tucker that kind of money was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and perhaps it's perhaps the AD's name is Mel Tucker Senior. Jimbo Fisher, 9 million. Better or
Who's
prove
your daddy? What? Okay, go ahead.
it. Coach that team. Jimbo Fisher, $9 million. Better or prove it.
Wow, that's a tough one. But if we put it in an SEC context, I'd say better. I mean, I'd rather have Josh Heupel than Jimbo Fisher right now. Now, if you'd asked me that a few years ago, I mean, with the Jimbo Fisher before 2021 season, I would say prove it.
Agreed.
But
Right
yeah,
now, I would say better. I think in retrospect, you have to look at Jimbo Fisher had a very special player at the college level in Jameis Winston, and he left that program in shambles. And I don't think that there's any chance that, unless something just crazy happens, that Josh Heupel would ever do that with Tennessee. So the last one I have for you is Lane Kiffin. Better prove it.
that's a tough one. I'd probably go better right now. It's a tough call.
Yeah, it's a close one, but I would go better as well. Now, as for the athletic director, Danny White, making $2.2 million. Why that's the biggest bargain in all of sports. Brought to you by Big Orange Phillies. Big Orange Phillies on Maynardville Pike has just absolutely unbelievable food, and they've got darts, billiards. They've got it all there for you to hang out and watch the game with all the televisions. Or if the game's not so great when we get to NFL playoffs and more, then you've got stuff to do there at Big Orange Phillies. They got karaoke too, and I'm just trying to pick out my karaoke song that I'm going to debut there. But that's on Maynardville Pike, close to Maynardville, close to Halls, close to Carnes Powell. You'll love it there, Big Orange Phillies. John, $2.2 million for an athletic director that has his basketball team, and he inherited Rick Barnes, but has his basketball team and the top five, his football team right at that level, and a baseball team that really caught the attention of the entire sports world, not just the college baseball world. Is that, other than maybe Brock Purdy, the best deal in all of sports right now?
Well, I don't know how much that has to do with Danny White. As you said, he didn't hire Rick Barnes. He
Well,
didn't keep Rick Barnes when he was flirting with UCLA. He didn't hire Tony Vitello, the baseball coach. Uh, he hired Josh Heupel, but Josh Heupel wasn't his first choice. He had his own Tony Elliott of Clemson. Thank you.
yeah, that wouldn't have worked out well. Okay, so he's top 8 nationally, top of the SEC. I guess this is just purely a football type of payday, right?
Yeah, but see, I have a hard time figuring out why any administrators warrant that kind of payday.
Okay.
Why would you pay any college administrator more than $1 million a year?
Well, I mean, I would argue that the head of a big business corporation, which is essentially what these are now, would sometimes warrant 20, 25, 30 million. Now, I'm not suggesting you get in that range, but I mean,
Wait,
it's a big time, tough job.
I just thought of something.
Lay it on me.
So I'll have to take that back. I just thought of something. Philip Fulmer was but Philip Fulmer, I was trying to say this with straight face. Philip Fulmer was paid $1 million as an AD. Based on that, then Danny White probably should be making $3 million.
Fair.
I
And
mean, he wore a coaching uniform and hung out at practice with the O-line. At least Danny White's managing a department. So based on that, I take back everything I said. Danny White deserves every cent of that contract and more, really.
more comfortable with a spreadsheet. Is that Danny White or Philip Fulmer?
Danny White didn't go to sleep in staff meetings. I've heard that from an inside source. He hasn't fallen asleep during a meeting.
That is a bonus. Now, the other thing that we mentioned briefly is that buyout on Josh Heupel's side. That's pretty much unheard of, and I think it is proper payback from the college football gods after Tennessee went through what it went through for a decade, more than a decade, to now have a guy that not only is successful, but views Tennessee. And I argued this back in the mid 2000s when people questioned this. Tennessee is one of the 15 or so destination jobs. You go there and you can be happy there. Don't worry about a jump to the NFL or going to a bigger program. I thought that Josh Heupel proved that in the way he structured his contract with UT.
Yeah, and I think the problem UT has had, it's not with UT, it's not an innate problem. We've talked about this before. Looking at the football program, it always recruits top 20 classes or pretty close to one. There are rare exceptions, but it doesn't matter. You could be the football coach there, Dave, and you'd bring in a top 25 class. The way you sell, you might even get a top 15 class.
I'm going top 5 the whole way.
Excuse me?
I'm going top 5, but I'm going to surround myself with guys that know ball better than me. That's my goal.
Okay. I don't know how many people would want to work for you, but maybe you got something there.
You do.
Well, there are a few. So, I just think it's a really good job, and it's a really good situation. And what's really strange is not that what Josh Heupel is doing, because of what he's done, based on the recent history, he's considered pretty much a savior. It's like a miracle worker. But if you look at what all Tennessee has going for it, what's really stunning is all these guys that failed.
Yeah. And what's stunning to me too is through the course of the decade of dysfunction, I'd heard that after Butch Jones was jettisoned that he said, "See, what's wrong with what I did? I won 9 games."
Yes,
So
he did.
yeah. So if there's any downside is that the expectations are extremely high. And I think sometimes the national media looks at that and says that's out of line. I don't think it is. I think they have all the facilities. I think they should compete for the college football playoff if it's 4 teams or 12 each and every year. I don't think that's asking too much given that you roll out there and you're going to be better than most of your non-conference opponents and you're going to be better than the Kentuckys and the Vanderbilts of the world. I mean, you should be at 8-9 wins. That's almost a default to me.
I think what happened, though, Dave, and you look at the overall program, the tradition, the history of the program, and that's correct. But when you go back to 2008, when the aforementioned Philip Fulmer gradually took the program way south, ending with a 5-win season in 2008, Lane Kiffin comes in and leaves after 1 year. Then you bring in Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, and who's that last guy? I've almost blocked him out. Jeremy Pruitt.
Yes.
You bring those guys in and they all fail. So I'm beginning to think Tennessee is not going back to the 90s ever. And it's not because Tennessee didn't have the resources, an incredible fan base, plenty of money, a good area in which to recruit regionally, and it has the ability to recruit nationally. It always has. It's got a great brand. But when I looked at one coach after another, one bad hire after another, and not not just as a football coach, but the people above him. I'm talking president, chancellor, AD. I pretty much concluded, no, it's not happening again. But all it took, and again, uh, was getting the right people in place. And this goes above the football coach and it goes above the athletic director. It goes back to the president with Randy Boyd and a chancellor, Donde Plowman, who got rid of Jeremy Pruitt.
Yep.
And right there, a case closed on her. That far surpassed anything administrators have done in recent memory for UT. She did that, and she wasn't bullied into or intimidated to, ooh, they might file a lawsuit. We better give him something to go away. No, she just said, go away. We'll take our chances with that. And so he's gone, and there's no lawsuit. So all of that had to happen. And once they, of course, you could argue that, well, why would they suddenly hire the right people for those positions? Because they failed consistently to do so in the past. But finally they did, and now it's all falling into place, not just in football, in baseball, and nobody saw that coming based on Tennessee's recent history. And in basketball, it was lucky to get Rick Barnes, but now he's got it, made Tennessee a top 10 program.
Yeah, very fortunate to get Rick Barnes. I want your one last take in that if Tennessee fans had to give up Nico Iamaleava or Danny White, who are making about the same amount of money, who would it be? Viles Automotive Group is the epicenter of car shopping in Knoxville on Callahan. You've got to get there. They'll treat you fair. They want, they need, they appreciate your business. Big Orange Phillies on Maynardville Pike is phenomenal. Great food, great family environment. You will love it on Maynardville Pike, close to Maynardville. So if Tennessee fans had to give up one, Nico or Danny White, who would it be?
See you, Danny.
Fair enough. Have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are and whenever you're listening and or watching. We're with you weekly, brought to you by Viles Automotive Group, Big Orange Phillies. I don't know it's that easy, but I'm going to think about it. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. He's John Adams. I'm Dave Hooker.